could infrastructures be eligible under 4.5 as long as they contribute to the objectives as proposed now by the legislators? Who would like to take it over?
Well, yes, infrastructure, yes. I mean, this is ERDF after all, so infrastructure is okay under 4.5. But it has to be, it has to fit into a into a plan. Please, we mentioned already a castle here, a castle there, and nothing around this. No, it has to. You don't need a strategy. I already answered the question. There's a question 3 there. Is a regional strategy required? It's not required in the sense that it is for PO5, where in PO5 it is compulsory. Of course, it's not here it's not an obligation, but it's it's highly recommended that you have a strategy behind your SO 4.5 if you use that. And that you know what you're looking for and what you want to change. Again, it's always the same story. What do you want to change? So you can do infrastructure, you can do soft. You don't need necessarily compulsorily a strategy, but we recommend that at least you have one and that you know what you want to be doing. I think under transnational programs, it's probably a bit more complicated to have a regional strategy when they cover such big areas. But again, you need to know what it is that you want to change. Yeah, sorry.
Would any other colleague from Commission would like to add something, or?
Maybe just to add about the infrastructures. Of course, the infrastructures need to have a cross-border cooperation dimension. It's not always easy to demonstrate in case of infrastructures. And as Nathalie said, cooperation is not about renovating 2 castles, one on each side of the border. So whilst it's possible, it's also important to demonstrate in what sense the infrastructure would facilitate cooperation.
Okay, then I think we can move over to the next quite obvious question. The word sustainable. I mean, in my understanding, it means to be economically, socially, and environmentally sustainable. So to have the 3 dimensions and to prove it, but maybe here I'm wrong. So question to Commission colleagues.
No, it's straightforward, Bernard. It's indeed all aspects of sustainability. So it's got to be economically viable. Of course, it's got to also be environmentally sustainable. There's no question about that. It's the wide acceptance of the word.
And if somebody asks you how to prove it, for me, it's rather part of the regular assessment of projects to really look into it. But would you have any recommendation beyond that?
Well, you can't really prove that in a programming document because you are just writing intentions there. But it would be strongly present in the selection criteria.
Mm-hmm. So really, when setting up your project assessment systems, consider sustainable under specific objective 4.5 under the 3 dimensions.
Absolutely.
Then, like most projects anyway. Yeah?
If I may intervene, this is Joanna Mulliou from Regio D1. As Johan mentioned before in his presentation, there are the macro-regional strategies which cooperate on sustainable tourism projects and actions and processes. So we might have also projects generated in the calls for proposals out of this macro-regional cooperation. And we consider this macro-regional cooperation to be on sustainable tourism. So this could be also a point to identify sustainable tourism projects through the macro regions. Thank you.
Then the next question. Using specific objective 4.5 and also include tourism culture in other policy objectives, e.g. SME-driven support under policy objective 1. I understood from the previous presentation from Commission colleagues the quite clear message, yes, but please correct me if I'm wrong. Who would like to take that one?
To be honest, I don't
Sorry, I had
understand the
muted
question.
myself. I had muted myself. So you're not wrong. I mean, please, colleagues, D1, D2 come in. But indeed, look, let's say that under 4.5, you clearly put tourism and culture at the heart of the activities, whereas under PO1, you have a priority that looks at innovation. And in your applicants, you have applicants that come from the tourist sector is perfectly fine. It's perfectly okay. Olivier, you want to compliment, or Johan?
No, indeed. I mean, you can, tourism by definition, it's a topic which is, it's not so much sectoral, it's in a sense integrated by nature, because if you want to do it properly, you need to address it in different ways. So it fits under different policy objectives, then it's for you to choose whether you prefer to concentrate everything on the 4.5, but in this case, you need to have a good intervention logic, a good story, etc., or you prefer to spread it over the over several policy objectives. Everything is possible, but again, it needs to fit the objective of the policy.
Exactly, it needs to fit, and it depends on exactly what you want to do. Tourism indeed is something that contains, that includes very many different aspects. And if you have something where the aspect, for example, is specifically about innovation, but from a tourist kind of point of view, well, then you probably better put it in PO1 because it fits better with the intervention logic. Or you have something which is very much about tourism, for example, and skills, well, then it would normally go in PO4. So you see, it depends a little bit on what kind of aspect of tourism that you want to stress. But so I mean, so I think one can be quite clear on this. But it depends on what you want to focus on, where it should go.
Thanks. So I think as a point of departure, look into the numbers of employment in tourism in the regions of your program area and see yourselves whether such figures would justify the objective 4.5 for your program area. It's clear that it has to have a substantial role in employment in the area, or at least a decisive role for the socio-economic development of parts of your area when taking it and looking into it as a driver of diversification and as a job engine. I see now questions related to indicators coming up, and I know it's Magali.
Yes,
and maybe we can answer it a bit jointly, but first, of course, the floor is yours.
Yes, so on the two questions on indicators, I see there is this, the first question, and there was the last one which now disappeared on whether Annex 1 is obligatory. So is the indicators, if you can move up now, Bernard. Yes.
It's not me, but yes, my colleague moving. But so there is one about mandatory use, there is one confirm no new ones, and then there seems to be another question related to.
So on the question, is the use of the RCO 77 mandatory and the specific objective 4.5? Well, here the answer is no. It's not mandatory. I mean, this specific objective, this indicator is and located now under PO5 with an asterisk, meaning it can be used also under PO4, but it's not mandatory. And there as well, I would refer to the question and answer published by Interact on the intervention logic, where we have where it's explained clearly that under PO4, the request is to use in the first place Interreg common indicators, and secondly, if this is relevant according to the intervention logic, the ERDF indicators marked with an asterisk, so such as this RCO 77. ESF plus type of indicators are not appropriate for Interreg intervention. And last point, it is not planned to modify at this stage the Annex 1 of the ERDF regulation with the list of indicators.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Magali. And then there is a
compliment, Bernard, if.
Mm-hmm. So there's just one point about the indicator fishes, and I think they are in current development. We can offer to send out again the latest stage of development we have, but it's a fact there is one indicator clearly related to tourism, or two indicators, one output, one result dedicated to tourism. Okay, the question on the regional strategy was already tackled by Natalie. Now comes the questions to small project fund under 4.5.
Sorry, Bernard, there's talking about sustainability, which was a question before. Dick Peters makes also in the chat, he's making highlight. Maybe he wants to get the floor, I don't know.
Okay. So, Dirk, would you like to say something on that?
Well, there's not much more to say than what I put in this chat. I mean, in Article 22 ETC on the selection of operations, sustainable development is a guiding principle. It's not even mentioned again on the different aspects that have to be taken into account when setting up the selection criteria. So there should even be a question that the principle of sustainable development with its dimensions, socio-economic, environmental, and even territorial, are a guiding principle when selecting cooperation projects.
And Dirk, having you there, a question also the provision that when selecting projects on infrastructure with a lifespan of more than 5 years, that you have to provide an assessment of the impact on climate change. Is that also still in?
I don't know by heart. I don't know by heart.
Oh, okay, because
that may be something that may be. That I will check. Maybe I have an answer later on, or it may be in the CPR and not in the ETC.
We'll provide it maybe after the meeting, but as far as I recall, that's also in, again, demonstrating the importance of environmental sustainability at least.
That the assessment has, point E, still ensure that selected operations which fall under the directive on project environmental impact assessment or screening procedure, and that the assessment of alternative solution has been taken in due account. That's still in ETC. It's paragraph 4, point E, EV Europe.
Okay, so we will provide maybe further clarifications after the meeting. And then I would like to move on to the question on small project fund under 4.5. Who would like to answer that?
Some kind of SPF? What kind of language is that? Who is anonymous here? An SPF is an SPF, so it's not some kind. It's well defined in the regulation, and as we have already repeated many times, the SPF is a tool, is a delivery tool, it's an implementation tool, and therefore can be used under any POs, including 4.5. Okay, it's a tool, so it should not be mixed up with an objective. It is a tool. It's applicable everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Quite clear. And okay, we've answered to the extent possible the question on the table with the indicators. So, and then we move on. I'm looking now, it means there is maybe more statements, so it seems to be a complement. Proposal suggests quite precise narrative, so that colleague from Program sees the need to invest a lot into project development. Would you like to comment on that?
No, but there are two narratives. There is one in the program, which is to explain what you want to do about tourism. You know, why is it needed? What you want to achieve, with whom, what will be the results, the outcomes, etc. So that's the narrative in the program. And that narrative needs to be indeed in such a way that you understand very well the intervention logic, and therefore that you understand very well in which policy objective it has been put. So that's the first narrative. Then when the actions come later on, they also need to make a narrative. They also need to explain what they want to do. And that narrative, again, needs to be in line with the intervention logic in the program. So you have the two narratives. But in both cases, let's say the approach is the same. It's basically to say what we want to do, to say why it is needed, to say why it will improve things. So, I mean, it's nothing new really, and it's, I mean, it's almost common sense. That's what we will look at when we will read the program.
If I may add something to this, generating projects, of course, is not always easy, and the programs, the colleagues in the joint secretariats, they do have a lot of work when they pass on the information following the call. They meet beneficiaries. They of course also will have to put their work into making the prospective beneficiaries understand what this narrative means. So in that sense, there is a little bit of a work to be done, of course.
Yes, and to conclude, if I may, indeed, I love that question because yes, of course, that's why we insist so much on a partnership process to even design the program, because you need to involve those who actually know what is needed, where the gaps are. That's also why for the cross-border programs, certain cross-border programs, we still think PO5 is the best place to do to support tourism and culture, because it has to be a collaborative effort where those who program and those who implement certainly work hand in hand. So I would say yes. And you know, I've been involved in Interreg for 20 years, and I've always said that only working with calls for projects that are very wide-ranging and that attract hundreds of projects, to then end up not selecting 90% of those or even 60% of those, is not necessarily the best way to work. And programs need to really think. And where you have a clear objective and a clear target, you do need to work hand in hand with those who can help you meet those targets. I would say this is a little bit the difference between a small project fund and a more strategic approach. you set up a small project fund because you want to support, let's say, smaller activities that will contribute to bringing in citizens, kids, education, not only, but this is one aspect of it. Whereas when you launch a call under PO1 for innovation and smart development, you probably need to be much more closely involved with the sector and with those who support SMEs and support innovation. So, this is all very consistent in what we're saying. If you develop your program with the right people by your side, some of your projects will come, the ones you want, and not 150 projects out of which you can only take 10, which is one way of working, but it should not be, in my opinion, the only way of working.
Thank you, Natalie. Now we're coming to the next question, which is a bit tricky because it refers to clustering, but it seems to be also a bit the question when you take PO4.5 into your program, that somehow it could be a hub for tourism development which spreads over other POs. So because there is in the question is also with respect to other policy objectives. So maybe first we could start with what is the general understanding of clustering, but also maybe how to establish a tourism cluster in your program, or a coherent narrative in the end. Who would like to start on that?
Well, maybe I'm here.
Yeah, you have a go?
Yeah. Maybe not the very best word here to use cluster, because the meaning, what we wanted to say, is to bundle, to put together all different actions on tourism and culture. So not clusters within tourism as such. More is putting under one, possibly to avoid scattering a different type of tourism and culture programs, and avoid actions all over policy objectives, and to avoid fragmentation. So we have policy objective 5, which is, keep repeating, provides a wonderful and maybe one of the best way to do this under a link to integrated territorial strategies. But if programs do not have that right now, and they are not going that way, they can do really a lot of very different type of activities related to tourism and culture under PO4/5. This doesn't necessarily mean that under other policy objectives, actions that involve some aspect of tourism related activities or culture related activities cannot be done. But as Johan and Olivier and Natalie has repeatedly highlighted, the focus primarily is under innovation or sustainable mobility is just a little part, tourism and culture.
What it means basically is that if you want to have a priority called tourism, then the best place is 4.5, because you can only have one policy objective per priority. So if you want, in terms of communication, etc., to have this priority on tourism, you can use 4.5. It doesn't prevent the programs to have also additional projects which focus on tourism, or which have tourism as one of their dimension under the other POs.
Thank you, Olivier. Would anybody else like to comment on that? Okay, so next question is, Since our big heading is tourism, I take the liberty to interpret the question like if there are any more detailed criteria, recommendations related to the content of a tourism strategy if a program decides for PO5, in addition to what the regulation says. Who would like to take that question?
Well, there is no tourism strategy under PO5. Under PO4/5, you have a strategy for a territory. It's an integrated territorial strategy. It may be that to develop the territory, you want to promote tourism. It may be, but probably not only, yeah? Because probably the territory has other needs, other assets, other prospects. So under PO5, it's a territorial strategy. And the content of the strategy, well, it's pretty clear in the regulation. Huh? It's about the geography, about the needs, about the kind of actions you want to do, about who will actually deliver the work, about how you will involve the stakeholders, the actors, the local authorities. It's pretty well defined in the regulation. You have like five points, I think. So that's basically it. Huh? And it's quite easy to make a template out of it.
If I can comment on that one as well, yeah, no, as Olivier said, I mean, this is it's set out. I think it's Article 26 in the CPR, if I'm not mistaken, which sets out these key criteria, what such a strategy should include. And there are examples. I mean, if you don't know how to do such a strategy and how such a strategy should look like, have a word with your colleagues who work with the Rural Development Fund or the EMFF, the Maritime Fund. They have loads of experience of this. They have done a lot of this within CLLD and LEADER programs. There's loads of information, examples on how such strategies could look like, but the key aspects are set out in the regulation. It's not something very, very complicated. It's no rocket science. And there are loads of examples on how to do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Johan. And just after our event on PO5, we're also about to prepare a short document which should help to clarify that. And whoever asked the question, please also get in touch, because when setting up the document, I have all the articles now in mind, and we can discuss it maybe also over the phone. Then the next question, again, or more statement, if you can bundle tourism in specific objective 4.5, why then also in other POs and not all just in 4.5? Who would like?
Well, because not all programs will choose 4.5. Your program, Anonymous, might choose that, and then you bundle it all under 4.5, which is fine, provided you have the right intervention logic behind it. But there are programs that will not select 4.5 and whose needs and opportunities in terms of tourism and culture might very well be better covered by focusing on green, sustainable, soft nature, slow tourism, for instance, and use only PO2 or some programs that will use PO5. So, I mean, yes, your question is valid, but only possibly for you, but there are other programs that will not use 4.5. And at the same time, even if you do bundle everything under 4.5 with a robust intervention logic, well, you might still choose to support SMEs under PO1, including those who are active in creative industries, for instance. As I said, great flexibility.
Thank you, Natalie. Would anybody else like to come in from the colleagues? Okay, then I'll move on to the next. Okay, there is a socio-economic analysis of the program area, and of course, it should be used to define whatever priorities in the program. there is what significance. So maybe someone could provide a brief recommendation or a brief statement on that from Commission side. So it seems to be the input to programming is a socio-economic analysis, and what could be the significance of such a document when deciding on the activities in the program with a view to tourism.
But this is confusing because SEA in our world means
I was confused, but I take it that it's a socio-economic analysis. So.
Well, if your SEA is indeed a socio-economic analysis, oh, I'm sorry that we have to use all these acronyms in very different ways. I'm not sure I really understand the question. I mean, your socio-economic analysis is the basis, is the starting point of your whole programming process, where you identify your assets and your opportunities, and also you identify your threats and gaps, and therefore based on what the decision makers would prefer to do, and the amount of money that you have to spend, there you take from your analysis the sectors or the activities that you wish to support. I'm not sure I understand this. You should then use the socioeconomic analysis in justifying your choices under your priority axis and the POs that you're choosing. I don't know. I don't know.
In a sense, the answer is in the question, because the question says this is the basis for defining the activities in the program.
Yes.
That's the answer. And then what significance has the SEA? Well,
it's the basis.
The basis to define the activities. So I guess the person who asked the question didn't mean that. I don't know what it was, but basically, as Natalie said, the starting point is to understand your territory, to understand your needs, and to decide what you want to do in the coming years.
I think Joanna wanted to come in.
No, yeah, thank you. This is Joanna.
Go
ahead. So I have just received some lines to take, drafts, but what I see here under PO4 for tourism, they are quite based on the specific objectives, of course, under ERDF, and the lines are: 1, enhancing the effectiveness and inclusiveness of labor markets and access to quality employment through developing social infrastructure and promoting social economy. 2, improving equal access to inclusive and quality services in education, training, and lifelong learning through developing accessibility infrastructure, including by fostering resilience for distance and online education and training. 3, promoting the socioeconomic inclusion of marginalized communities, low-income households, and disadvantaged groups, including people with special needs, through integrated actions, including housing and social services. There is a provision on promoting socioeconomic integration of third country nationals, ensuring equal access to health care and fostering resilience and health system. So all this could be part of a socioeconomic analysis, if this can help to reply to the question.
Thank you, Joanna. And I mean, what I've mentioned before, I think the basic point of departure is when you go for 4.5 in tourism, the socioeconomic analysis should provide some insights into the role in employment, plus into the role in GDP for the regions your program area is composed of. Because then you can start assessing the significance of tourism, and then it helps you to assess also from the other side, from Commission side, why the program has gone for the option 4.5. Then we have an interesting one, e-location to find latest indicator fishes. This is what we will provide after the event. But then there is one about the recovery model. Do you think project CBC external shall focus on internal tourism within the area, or better tourists from, I guess I can't see it now in the full, from the outside. So this is now from an ENI or CBC, external CBC program. Who would like
Magali?
to comment on that question?
Magali is from the IPA team, so maybe she can.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I'm sorry, I was looking at the chat. Well, I mean, the same principles apply as for I would say as for regular Interreg programs on the internal border. We look at the whole territory of the program on both sides of the border. I don't really see the, but maybe I don't understand fully the question. It's yeah.
I think that the basic message to Bernard to the question is that we won't make a difference between internal and external in this case, huh?
No.
Mm-hmm.
The approach.
What matters is that the region covered by the program improves. So that can be done with the tourists of the area, but it can also be done with tourists coming from outside into the area and visit it. So what we want is to have an impact on the cross-border area.
Yeah, exactly.
What I also would see. By all means, try to attract tourists to the area within confinement of a sustainable tourism model. There is now an interesting one. Is it necessary that SMEs are active only in social inclusion and social innovation sectors? There seems to be a bit confusion now since it's PO4, and it was highlighted to some extent that it would be a welcome part of it, a welcome element in it, but of course it can't be all of it. But please, who would like to comment on that question?
As you said, indeed, Bernhard, under policy and in general, it's not only SMEs that are involved in the areas of social inclusion and innovation sectors. So it and tourism and culture. In these areas, there are many other SMEs that, especially during these times, are having a very, very difficult time. So not exclusively SMEs of such type.
Indeed, because the way it's worded, I mean, 4.5, it talks about economic development, and that's why it's not only those which are on social inclusion and social innovation, but indeed enterprises in general.
Okay, then we have another question which was answered already, how to deal at program level with now the several options that there are to support tourism.
Yes, so just to repeat once more that it is of course feasible if you so choose, and if your socio-economic analysis and the strategy you derive from that analysis, if that fits in, it's also feasible to support the recovery of tourism and culture through involving the relevant stakeholders and partners in different POs without choosing 4.5, where you can bundle things more easily. It's of course very feasible to do that. Yes, it is not excluded. Actually, it might even be the best way for you to do that, depending on the conclusions of your analysis and your political choices or policy choices.
Thank you, Natalie. There is now whether you would recommend cooperation with Creative Europe. I would say without knowing Creative Europe in detail, whatever helps to raise profile of future tourism project is welcome. But maybe a colleague from Commission would like to comment on potential role of Creative Europe when shaping your program tourism approach?
Well, cooperation with any other funding mechanism is always a good idea. At least taking an interest and looking at what they are doing. The big difference between Creative Europe, of course, and Interreg is the territoriality. Creative Europe is not territorially based, but that doesn't mean that there is no scope for complementarity or synergies. You need to indeed have a look at it. If you have the time to do that, I would certainly not discourage you from doing that, keeping in mind that the objectives are, well, some of the objectives might be similar, but the approach will be very different compared to the Interreg cooperation approach based on territories in programs.
In fact, Nathalie, if I may,
maybe Interreg Europe has a very big element of complementarity with Creative Europe. Sorry, Joanna, go ahead.
Yes, in fact, this is about it to be an interregional cooperation instrument.
Yes.
Although direct funding, but in the past we have been working together with our colleagues from DG AC and also from DG GROW as regard the COSME calls. And if there is any necessity to take over and to focus on a specific topic, then this is possible to work together and to identify common actions under this topic. This is remain to see for the upcoming programming period, taking in mind also the announcement on the 19th of November of the new Bauhaus, European Bauhaus initiative. Which will take over and promote the Green Deal and digital innovation. And this is remain to see, but it is expected that different commission services work together, in particular for the topic of culture.
Thank you. And I think there is one question maybe to Johan. It seems to be from a person in a transnational program struggling to find alliances to establish a common thinking on cultural tourism.
Yeah, but I'm not sure I understand that question, because I could read it as the person asks what to do in such cases where there is no cooperation. So, in other words, whether is it to be related to a macro-regional strategy cooperation, or what to be related to here? If the question is, so if that is the question, so what do we do in case we have no macro-regional cooperation in order to come for these countries to come together and develop a common thinking on culture and tourism? If that's the question, I think first, I think that also in such areas where there is no such macro-regional cooperation, so we have the Atlantic area, for example, which is not, but there is also cooperation there, although it's not classified as a macro-regional strategy, also in the North Sea. So I think that that cooperation platforms are already also in those areas, and that it is more a question of trying to in that case to speak to them and see what is available there. But I'm not sure I understand the question correctly, and I don't know if perhaps also Joanna would like to complement what I'm now trying to say here.
What I understand is that normally we should have a cooperation strategy, not in a sense of having an official strategy, but when we design the program, there is a strategy behind it. There should be a strategy behind, a cooperation strategy behind, officially or not. So in that case, it's very much, up to the intervention logic of the program. And in order to build up an intervention logic, of course, we need to have a basis, a cooperation basis. And this tourism or a culture, target should be comprised in this basis. Should be called a strategy or not.
Sorry, Bernard, to interrupt. We have only 1 more minute, okay?
Yes, so I would then switch to a quick answer to the last question. Do you think tourism and culture projects have to be launched by public, private, or both? Who would like to give a quick answer to that?
By any stakeholder that has, the mandate to actually get to the change you want, basically, get to the result that you want. Public, private, that is not relevant. It's got to be the right bodies and the right organizations and the right companies involved in the tourism and culture sector.
Thanks, Natalie.
And by the way, we have to take the last one, the one below, on applications. How do we make sure the applications fit our plans? This is absolutely, and it is fundamental to the work of the programs, and especially the joint secretariat, is you must put all the resources that you can put into your calls. Because if you work on the basis of calls, which most programs do, you must really make sure that you launch the call properly with the right formulation that will get you to the right type of project. If your call is badly formulated or too widely formulated, you will not necessarily receive the projects that you want. It is very much worth investing time, resources, capacity in drafting the calls if you decide to do calls. Think about targeted calls where you can be very precise in what you're looking for. Think about two-step approach where you can also pre-select some ideas before people invest a lot of money and time in developing project applications. Think really strategically about how you do that. Only then do you get the type of projects that you want.
Thanks, Natalie. And with that, I would like to close the question and answer session.